Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session. My name is Paula Alphonse with PA Plus Consulting. I am a leadership and change management coach and trainer as well. Uh, what I would mention here, the reason that we're having this session today is that over the last few weeks, I've had quite a few conversation with different individuals that were struggling with various aspects of the COVID-19 pandemic. And the information as well as the disinformation circulating out there is just so confusing for quite a few people. So after a few back and forth with Luc Termonville from Bia Media, we came up with this forum to open the dialogue within the community and give you a chance to express, exchange some of the things you're going through and figure out maybe as a group what are some of the tips and the tools that we can put in place to keep us healthy and as well sane through this crisis. Thing to remember, we are all in this together and learning as we go. One rule of engagement, what I'm going to ask for everyone when we start, we open the lines for the questions. Remember to be kind and respectful to one another because we just don't know what people are going through right now. And we're going to discuss some of what happens in the brain when things like this happen, but just to make sure that we're a safe environment for the people that are listening in. You can interact when we open the conversation with you for your questions and your queries via the live comments. You can post your comments and we'll try and address as many of them as we go through. So Luc, can I ask you to put the slide on? I'm going to put slides. We only have 4 or 5 of them, so don't worry. And we're going to leave you plenty of time to discuss afterwards. So let's move to the brain in action. And remember that when we're looking at the brain itself, it's to remember that the brain controls what we think, what we feel, how we learn, as well as things we remember and the way we move and talk. So those are all things that the brain does every single day. Yes, you can pull up the slide for me, Luc. That would be great. So in that conversation, before we move into more details, what we want to remember is that the brain could be compared to a hard drive on your computer, which means that there's a lot of things that are happening in the background behind the scenes that are pre-programmed. And the brain is technically constantly multitasking and working on automatic pilot for certain elements, certain things that we do every day. This is why you can sleep and still hear what's happening around your house, the children moving and or whatsoever. This is why also you can you sometimes wake up just before the alarm because you knew you had to wake up at a certain time. So those are things that the brain does without us being truly aware of. So what you see on the screen right now, the brain in action, there's usually 2 main elements. I'm not going to go to a lot of details as to the various parts of the brain because I will lose some of you and I will lose myself too. But just in general, what you have is the modern brain and then the primal brain. The modern brain is the portion that looks as problem solving, memory, language, judgment, impulse control, as well as reasoning, while the other side, which is the primal brain, looks to survival, this drive, as well as instinct. What you have to remember is that the primal brain is the brain we had when we first started on this earth as humans. And in those moments, we were sometimes the hunters, but sometimes the prey for other bigger animals who were trying to find their food. So this is the system that the part of the brain that keeps us safe in times of danger. This is also the that part of the brain that would be triggered in times of fear and uncertainty as we're living right now. And what it does is that it starts the survival mechanisms so that we can get away from that perceived danger. In those situations, three things to remember in terms of reactions. The normal human reactions are what we call the three F's: flight, freeze, and fight. And this is the body automatic built-in system designed to keep us safe and protect us from any danger or threat. And this system is critical even to this day because it let us know what are those situations that could be potential danger, even if our rational brain might just see, oh, there's a man across the street. But if I know, I look at it and there's something off about this man across the street, then this is my primal brain coming into play. In those moments when the primal brain kicks in situation of danger, the rational brain is shut down. So it's just survival, drive, and instinct. This is how do we get you out of danger as quickly as possible. And once we out of danger, then we calm down, and then the rational mind slowly returns. And that is until it is triggered again. And it can be triggered on a regular basis currently when we're looking at COVID from the perspective of me watching the news constantly and hearing that danger message coming through every single day, every single hour. It could be triggered when I'm in the stores, when there's empty shelves, and I'm thinking we're gonna run out of food. It can also be triggered when I see people wearing masks around me and I'm thinking, I should be having one, so what's wrong? So all of those triggers, what they do is that they put our body on alert mode. So even if it's not an immediate danger, my body creates a sense of anxiety within that leaves me alert and ready to fight or to flee. And I just cannot seem to relax. And in those moments, and this is why you're going to see a lot of messaging going around right now about the mental health and why it is so important to pay attention. I have to be aware that even when I'm not conscious of being tense or anxious, I'm on alert and it's going to show in terms of my responses to triggers. And it's usually those what we call exaggerated response. It will show as your patience wearing thin, or your temper flaring up at a lot faster than it used to. Sometimes your sense of humor running a really dark mode. So those are all things that come into play and create that sense of there's a danger around me. Moving to the next slide, which is something that we've seen. I think you switched my slides. Yes, we need to go to the who do I want to be during COVID-19. And in that conversation, what you want to note is that we all gonna go through the three phases. So which is one is a fear zone, one is a learning zone, and one is a growth zone. And I think some of you might have seen that same graph in social media. Unfortunately, I cannot find the originator, so it's there, but I don't have copyright or anything like that. What it shows you is that first, when there's a big change, is that sense of fear. And all of my triggers seems to be lighten up or all the way around me. And and usually in this segment, I am on reaction mode. Then in the learning zone, is when I usually become a little more aware of my reaction and what is creating stress for me, and I start looking at, are there ways for me to make different take different action, make different decision. And then we get to the growth area, which is where I am a little more comfortable with that new reality. I understand myself, I understand my environment, and I make conscious choices that or take actions that benefit me and the people around me. So, which would be things like I practice meditation, I go for walks, I stop watching the news 24/7. I do things that allow me to stay healthy. I was asked recently, what are some people acting so crazy in the stores right now? And still, with respect to that same graph, what it brings to mind is for some people under quarantine, their brains are already on survival mode, and it's as though they were at war. And as they're trying to make sense of that new reality that we are living, at the same time, they're fearing for their lives, sometimes fearing for their livelihood because I might no longer have an income, and wondering about tomorrow. So, this is something that we have nothing to compare to, and my brain is sending a signal that is an immediate danger because it's the sense like I don't know what to make of that reality. Your brain, its role is to build predictability in order to anticipate what's going to happen. You don't start thinking about, I should get my heart pumping because I'm waking up this morning. Your brain does that. So the predictability, the routine is how the brain helps you anticipate how to deal with what happens in front of you. So, as I mentioned, when in survival mode, my rational mind is completely hijacked by my emotions. Panic sets in, and we have this tendency to over catastrophize everything. And in those moments, the empty shelves might leave me with that sense that, oh my God, this is the thing that I need to have right now. So, be it the toilet paper, be it the hand sanitizer, or be it the flour that I promised the kids we were going to make cake with. This is where the combative behaviors and outbursts come out because I can't control myself and my reactions. Another question I got was, I live alone and I'm staying home 24/7. And it's literally driving me crazy. What can I do? This is where we're talking about comfort zone. What about the fact that we've changed how we used to operate, and all of a sudden, I have to reassess what my everyday today is. And in that question, for me, there's two elements to it. One is, what do I do with myself when I'm stuck home? That's the person wondering. And the second would be, how much interaction do I need or want daily? For the first element, which is what do I do with myself? The first thing I would suggest you do is try to take back control over your reality. And the easiest way to take back control is really from the perspective of building routine. Figure out a routine that works for you so that the brain can receive the message that there's order and predictability. And this way, I will not get that sense that I'm restless and going aimlessly from one room to the next. For me, I would say during this quarantine time, but even when we're not in quarantine, I always start my day with a walk. It helps that I have a dog, which will not let me go too far into the day before getting them out. But it's just the sense where I know that it is something that I do every day, and it helps me keep that sense of normalcy. At the same time, while I work from home now, I also make it a point of putting clothes on, getting dressed, if we can call it, because I find that um, when I'm still in my PJs or in my gym wear, my I'm not as productive, and I know something is off. So this is just helping me help my brain understand now we're going to work. It's still in the house. It looks like you could do it any way you want it, but if I don't do it like that, I know that I get more easily distracted. With respect to the other element, the second element about how much interaction does the person want daily, it's this portion where some of us are extroverts and others are introverts. And in that conversation, it's to understand that the introverts will recharge their energy by being alone, while the extrovert need interaction with others to recharge their energy. So in those elements, it's figuring out, what am I? Am I an introvert or am I an extrovert? If I know that I am an extrovert, then I will have to build in a process so that I have either FaceTime with a friend, Skype or phone or Zoom, whatever it is, to get that human connection and not have this impression that I'm stuck behind four walls. So it's enlarging my walls by bringing people from the outside in the conversation. I've heard of people having what they call virtual cocktail time, or even having dinner together, but each in a separate household. So those are the ways that we're trying again to bring back the normalcy. And in terms of structure, we also have to appreciate that if the whole family is home at the same time, 24/7, guess what? Everything is happening in that same restricted space. Boundaries between people are easily blurred, and you're going to see that the tempers are going to flare. So we have to also create a routine, because remember, whether it was the kids, the husband, the wife, the adults still living in your environment, the idea was they had some away time from one another. And also then we all together all the time. So we'll have to learn how to cohabit, be together, and also be separate in that same space. So that'll be a bit of negotiation. As a parent, you might be the person responsible for creating that space. If the children are doing homework on the kitchen table, then they also need time out from away from that kitchen table to release their energy and do things. Because when they were in daycare, guess what? They had a lot of activities. And it's likely, by the way, for those of you that are interested, we might have a whole segment on managing work and play with children at home during the confinement. So if we go back to the graph, is to recognizing through the whole element, you have choices. You can make choices every single day in so many different ways. It's about checking my pulse and validating, is it working for me or the people around me? And learning, how do we get to that state where everybody's comfortable and we can coexist, cohabit, and function in that environment. And there, it's to remember to keep trying to do one little thing, one little tweak at a time, and see what works better for the group, for the people, for the reality that you're in. In the end, we are all work in progress, being tested every single day in our various realities. So, remembering that in our brains, routine means happy time. Habits means I can predict what's going to happen. Automatic pilot means I'm in control. So, what can I do in that new reality to find my control back, to figure out things that keep me at peace? It could be I wake up as I go for a walk, or it could be I just smell the coffee that has just brewed and I take the time to enjoy my coffee in my own house without any stressor about having to step out. So you're going to have to figure out in that new situation, in those new situations that we're going through, what are some new behaviors that we need to pick up and figure out what that new normal as it currently is will be for you and your family. So here I'm going to open up the floor for questions if you have questions. And this is where you have the opportunity to ask whatever it is that you want to ask. In this, again, I remind everybody, let's aim to be kind and respectful to everyone and not passing judgment where it's not necessary, because as we're going through this reality, let's remember that not all of us are maneuvering across the same roads or traveling at the same space or speed. So, from that element, how do we help people better understand what needs to take place? So, don't be shy. We're all growing together. So, if you have questions, this is the time to ask.
Um, so I think actually I have a question, Paula. Um,
Okay.
so I wanted to know, is there any tips for people to make that transition from a fear zone to a learning zone? Just given like there's so much information that people are consuming, whether it's online on social media about what's going on. So basically, they're in that fear zone because they're getting so much
Okay.
information, and at the same time, they want to keep themselves informed of what's going on so that they can be aware. Is there any tips, any recommendation for them to make that smooth transition from fear zone to the
Mhm.
learning zone?
The first thing I would suggest is pay attention to your reaction as you're listening to the various channels. So for me, I will listen to the news as it comes from the prime minister. And this is where I know this is the government approach. We know how we're going. And I'm listening to it once a day or once every other day. But I don't keep checking what's being said, how is that it has been interpreted, or whichever. So I have to figure out who are
Mhm.
the trusted resources. And then when you're looking at those resources, then what are the elements? I'll show you something that we've received in the mail today. And it's a document. I live on the Quebec side. You don't, but chances are you either will receive something like this or something's on the way to you. And it's a guide for self care with respect to COVID-19. So it's understanding that government is doing an amazing job trying to keep us informed and trying to not at the same time overload us with too much information. And as they're doing this, there are some people who want more and then they want to compare, then they want to track what was yesterday, where are we at now? And then it becomes a number game that is creating stress. If you're if you're one of those individuals where that number game is creating stress, then that means your body, your brain is telling you stop doing that.
Mm.
So it's understanding that and becomes more self-aware of what's happening to me. If I am one of those individuals who, let's just say, goes to the grocery store and then as soon as something that I want is not there, I start panicking, then that tells me I need to take a step back, breathe in, breathe out, and then take things into could I say, take a bit of distance, take things into perspective so that I don't panic as much. Reality is, as far as we are in Canada, and I'm not going to say it's the same from every country, we at this point are not in a situation of lack. And there are a large number of people working hard to ensure that we have what we need when we need it, and not in a context where I need to store a lot of things and protect or overprotect my environment. So it's recognizing myself. And as I'm recognizing myself, then this is where you move on to they slowly move on to the next step. I've
Definitely.
heard of individuals, actually, some of my coworkers, I was talking to them and I've asked them, what are some of the positive elements that they've noted in their current space? And what they've mentioned was the slower pace
Mm-hmm.
allows them to better connect with their family.
Mm-hmm.
Others have mentioned, I get to walk by the water every day. Been living in this area for so many years and I haven't been able to do this because I was always rushing. So though there might still be the pandemic, there are still good things happening. And as I take an attitude of gratitude where I can see the value or I can give value to those precious moments, then all of a sudden the danger doesn't seem so over encompassing.
Okay. Um,
I'm watching the time and I'm not seeing not seeing questions coming in. So what I also want to mention, look, if you don't mind putting back the last slide, I wanted to share with you what I call the next step and things to remember. And in that, I have maybe three elements per se, would be the next slide. So keep going down. Yes, another one. Okay, next step, what you'll see, self-care. Self-care is about taking care of you so that you can take care of others. That will mean if sleeping in a little longer in the morning does my heart good, then do that. Figure out how to take care of yourself so that you have this sense of energy and control over your reality. Pay attention to your mindset because sometimes our biggest challenge is what we have between our two ears. What I'm telling myself, what I'm worrying about, those things that I have no control over. So in those moments, I want to shut that door and just remember what's going well. Then watch out for your triggers. You have to be able to recognize your triggers in order to address those elements and figure out a way to counteract the reaction. You don't want to find yourself snapping at people or even punching someone out and figuring out after that, I was just stressed. You have to figure out if you need to do a little boxing at home or in your backyard, then you do that in your backyard. When you're stepping out in the street and interacting with other people, don't put yourself in a situation that will create more challenge for you. What you also see, if you're, and we'll post it as well with the live, you will see available resources to stretch yourself. There's some information from the Mental Health Commission of Canada where you have quick tips and tools to help you maneuver through your everyday. And I'm also providing you, if you want it and if you have the time and you want to stretch your thinking and stretch your path forward, a quick ebook that is called 5 Tips to Get Out of Your Own Way and Achieve Concrete Results. So you can get to that via the website, which is mybestliferightnow.com. And you will see it also on the post underneath this live. So it seems like we're turning off shortly. And I want to thank you very much for having listened to some of what I had to say. And if you want to drop comments afterwards, I'll be more than happy to listen. And if you want to mention some of those things that you'd like us to address, bring forward, or whichever, also do that. So again, this was Getting Real with Paula. And it was a pleasure interacting with you. Have a great evening.